guys. Roman Lost Podcast. We're back. This is the first episode that I recorded for season 2 on the new board, on the new setup. It's freaking awesome. Loving it. It's amazing. So much better. It's like night and day. But anyways, today I talked with Nate at Nate in the Wild, Nate in the Wild on Instagram, and we talked about all kinds of good stuff. He's a outdoor travel, wildlife photographer, commercial photographer, and how much he appreciates the outdoors and some trials and tribulations that he's had. And yeah, we just had a great little talk, and would love to share that with you guys. And here it is. We'll go right into it. All right. Hey, what's up? It worked that time.
All right, sweet.
It's a whole new setup, and you're the first person to be on it. So,
oh, nice. All right.
Working out the kinks. This is so it connects to the board like through Bluetooth. So that's why maybe a little finicky, but it's working out. It's recording.
All right.
I can hear you.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't like drop the call or something halfway through. That would be a bummer.
Yeah. No, it's all good. I'll just end up calling you back, and we'll just splice it together.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. I guess there's always some post production for that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So, well, thanks for taking the time to hang out and talk about photo and what you do and all that.
Yeah, for sure, man. This is I think this is actually my first podcast, so that's fun.
Oh, rad. Well, awesome. Welcome. We've talked to a couple people. I don't know if you got a chance to listen to any others, but
I did actually. Yeah, I just listened to one a couple days ago.
Oh, sick. Did you you know Garrett, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So definitely Garrett and some others that it's all different kinds of people. So it's kind of nice to just keep it changing up. So each episode's obviously a different person, but obviously different occupation and whatnot. So it's gonna be a photographer, and then I got another guy that owns a wheel company and all kinds of random stuff. So
nice. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. There's only so much bandwidth for people to consume like photography related media. So, shoehorning in some other, like you can keep the outdoor industry in there and you can reach really broad market bases, which is cool.
Yeah, totally. And that's kind of what it's about. It's like basically full-time creatives just doing their thing and, committing to that job and their story and, not all the glamour, there's definitely a lot of talk about the struggles and all that stuff. Cause I feel like that's what people should hear and be inspired by that versus like, it's all gravy, it's not always like that.
Yeah, for sure.
But
it's definitely not always like that.
But yeah. Okay. So intro, informal intro, but a formal intro. So you're on Instagram, you're Nate in the Wild, and remind me. So how do you say your last name?
Luebbe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it
Don't
was
worry,
like
nobody gets that right.
I didn't know if it was like French, like Luebbe, or like something random.
Yeah, no, it's just Luebbe unless we have reservations at the Olive Garden, and then my dad says it's a Luebbe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, remind me, like, so you live in Pacific Northwest. I think you said Washington.
Yeah, I'm up in Seattle. I guess I always struggle saying I live here. I definitely pay rent here, but I feel like I'm home less than I'm not at home.
Yeah, no, I think that's like a big part of why I wanted to talk with you, because it's like the struggle between I've talked to Gary about it too. It's like how do you like stay in one place, and then but also obviously you got to go move around for work and stuff. So the struggle between the two, and so you're mainly like a wildlife photographer. or just outdoor
Um,
photographer? What would you want to classify yourself as?
yeah, I kind of classify myself as a nature slash travel photographer, I suppose, because I find myself branching off into a bunch of different subsets. And part of that's because it's a little bit easier to not shoehorn yourself in, but also it's because I really just like traveling and being outside, and I don't want to like force myself into a box. So I
Yeah.
love wildlife photography because wild animals are really cool, but it's also a very difficult kind of photography. It requires a lot of patience. It requires a lot of like very delicate backcountry travel just for like a single photo, and you'll probably shoot 500 that you don't like before you get the one you do. So
Yeah.
I do some wildlife. I do a lot of landscape photography. That was actually like what I started with, was landscape photography. And that's kind of fun because if you don't find an animal, then you can still be productive while you're outside.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, if you look back at like your Instagram, it's like half and half, like landscape and wildlife. Obviously, like polar bears are, you just went and shot those, so it's like those things are so awesome. But
Yeah.
yeah, like it's pretty rad. And then so what do you do? What would you say you do for work, like to pay the bills? Like, do you work with companies like clothing companies, like outdoor kind of like brand companies, or do you do like tourism boards, or kind of like?
Yeah, no, that's a good question because a lot of people just assume that like what they see on my Instagram is what pays my bills, and it's really, my Instagram's just kind of like my showing off page where I share the fun stuff that I like. But you're totally right. I work with tourism boards for sure. Those are honestly my favorite projects because like I worked with Visit Albuquerque, and they were just like, how about you go mountain biking and then go up in a hot air balloon and then go to this great brewery? And I was like, oh, sweet. This is just, it's like a fun vacation.
Yeah,
And
totally.
get to bring my camera with me.
Paid vacation.
And then, yeah, I do some commercial work, for outdoor gear brands, like Eddie Bauer and Feathered Friends and stuff like that. Shooting some catalog stuff. Occasionally get paid to post on the old Instagram, which still feels weird to me that that's like a legitimate source of income in 2019, but
yeah.
And then I also teach workshops, which is probably like a third of my income. Also, is like people pay to tag along on one of these cool trips and learn some camera pointers and get to take them to some of my favorite spots because scouting and researching is the hard part. So people pay to go to the spots I've already found and learn how to use their camera when we get there.
Yeah, because I saw that your workshops are like they vary in like what the content is like. I mean, there's wildlife. There's like there's that one with Norway, and then foxes. I think there was, and so it's like it's pretty good range, and yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we try to have like a banger, so to speak, for each trip. So, like the Norway one, people want to see the Northern Lights, so they come along to hopefully see those for the first time and go home with a killer photo. But then, some people don't care about landscapes; they just want to see animals, and so I try to have some trips for them too. And it's those are really fun. They're it's like kind of, you end up really good friends with everybody by the end of the week, and everyone goes home like really stoked on their shots. So I love workshops.
Yeah, workshops seem to be like pretty popular as of lately too, and especially like end of the or mid to end of this year, going into next year. People are more and more are doing that more. Well, at least photographers are.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
So what got you kind of like where you're at? Like, did you always shoot photos? Like for example, like we don't actually like know too much about each other, but I've been shooting for like about 15 years or something like that, and I've been shooting whatever for all those years, but I've always shot photos, and it just kind of goes into whatever kind of groove is going at the time. Do you come from like a long background of photography, or is it recent, or?
Yeah, so I have this like weird habit of taking hobbies and getting way too serious with them and turning it into a career on accident. So I did it with brewing first. I was like a passionate home brewer, and I ended up as a professional brewer for 5 years because I took my hobby too seriously. And photography was kind of one of those so my dad was a reporter growing up, So he always had a camera in his hand, and he like taught me some stuff. And I always thought it was cool, but I never did anything with it really. It was like could hold the camera and I'd like have some fun growing up, and then I forgot about it for like 12 years. And then, when I was in college, I was like going on hikes all the time because I went to college in Boulder, Colorado. So like a 5-minute drive to the mountains, so we'd go skiing or hiking. And I would just I started bringing my cell phone had a camera on it. So I was taking photos, and I was like, man, this is kind of fun to like document these adventures. And I eventually started getting frustrated with how bad, like the iPhone 2 camera was. And so I bought myself a little digital camera, and it just kind of got addicting, and I was just doing it for fun for a while. And then, one day somebody offered to like pay money for one of them, which blew my mind at the time. And I was like, holy cow, people want these bad enough to spend money on them. And so I decided it'd be kind of fun to supplement my income. So I put a little effort into that and practice, started taking it a little more seriously. And the next thing I knew, I was actually making money with it, and realized that I didn't have to go to the boring 9-to-5 job anymore. I could just do the like hiking and the nature part. And it's definitely not easier, but I enjoy it significantly more.
Yeah. The iPhone really like opened up a lot of doors for people to access it like quickly and easily. Which is awesome, but then it puts you and puts you into like this whole thing of like everyone's a photographer and blah blah blah, but
Totally.
I guess it depends on how seriously you take it. That's where I would differentiate people from hobbies and like literal photographers. But yeah, so you start with the phone and doing all the thing. How did you like what made it the full-time job? Like what was it that person buying the photo for whatever, or was it like a big job or someone approaching you for a job or?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It was all kind of like gradual. So I wasn't making great money at my last job, and so when I realized I could make some money with photography, it seemed like a good way to supplement my income.
Yeah.
And so I started reaching out to some companies, and Sierra Designs was like one of my first brands that actually like put a little faith in me. Honestly, like being fully honest, they probably hired me before I was like actually ready for the job, but I was cheap, which is good. And then I tried my hardest. So I think I didn't disappoint them too bad, because we worked together again since then. But, I supplemented my income enough that I realized I was making about the same amount of money on Saturday, Sunday as I was Monday through Friday. And I was like, oh man, well, maybe it's time to really go for it. And then I was really lucky. A friend of mine, his name is Craig Foldis. He started this travel guide called Dirt Road Travels. It was like a brand new startup. He had the funding and a concept, and that was it. And he basically was like, hey man, I can pay you for about 3 months on the road. We're going to go to about 20 cities and build out digital travel guides.
Yeah.
And it was a long enough assignment that I couldn't really like take vacation time from my job, but it was 3 months of income. And so I was like, you know what, screw it. This is the shot. So I put in my notice at work, and we got in his Jeep, and Craig and I lived in his Jeep for 3 months. And it was an awesome time. I got to take a ton of photos, build out the portfolio, learn a ton about the business. And that was kind of it. It was just diving into the deep end without without knowing how to swim, but we figured it out as we went.
Yeah, totally. I think that's like a big common. Well, it's we have almost the same story. It's like I just quit my job and just said, you know what, I'm going to do it. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it now and not later. So I think that is a common thing. Like people just going 100%, versus like having one foot in, because it's kind of hard to especially with like a travel kind of job, like you said, it's like how do you take off time from work, or how they're not going to understand, or they're not going to want to understand, like a month off or here and there. Like that's not a reliable like employee which is understandable, but
totally.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to do the travel and at least out of the city kind of work in the first place. So you just kind of have to go for it.
Totally, yeah, and it's interesting. I know you've had Garrett King on this podcast, and it's interesting. So, we both lived in Colorado, not far from each other. And
Yeah.
I hadn't met him at the time, but when I was still working my day job, he was one of the photographers that I like really looked up to. I loved his work. He was an inspiration. And I listened to his interview on a different podcast, and he mentioned a similar thing where he had a day job, but he got an offer for like a lengthy assignment, and he said, "Screw it, I'm going to quit my job and go for it."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Man, that's really cool." And so it was really funny. Like about a year later, I found myself in the same position, and I remember thinking, like, "All right, man, this is your short stash moment." And
Yeah.
it's funny now because I've actually met Garrett several times. We're on the Sony team together and stuff, and so it's funny, like, seeing that transition. Like you said, it's kind of a common thread for people.
Yeah. I think that it's just yeah, it's just kind of nice, in mentally just being like, 100% there versus just like going back and forth. But um so did was the photography or the outdoor stuff like kind of like a big part of like you said because of Colorado and stuff, or was that kind of like was that gradual as well?
Oh no, yeah, that's the plan from the beginning.
Oh, okay.
I grew up in a mountain town in Colorado. I'm an
Yeah.
Eagle Scout, so
Yes.
I'm always outside. That's like my jam. It sounds silly, but I just like don't have an interest in like weddings or corporate photography or
Yeah.
like cityscape, street. I just love to be outside. I love nature, and so that's been the plan from day one for sure.
Yeah. I've been watching a lot of Gary V videos. I don't know if you watch any of his videos, but he talks about how you just got to do what makes you happy. And it's simple as that. It's like instead of trying to make money or worried about money, you just got to kind of do what makes you happy. And usually it kind of follows you, around and you kind of eventually do get to live the way you want to live by just doing it and things happen.
Totally. There's so many people who they work, I guess, to like afford to do the cool things. And I mean, man, I've been there for sure. And it's a bummer when, like at my last job, you're working to try and do the cool things. You're not making enough money to actually get to do the cool things. And I made the decision, I guess, that like if I'm going to be broke, I want to at least be broke doing the things that I love.
Yeah.
And I'm very fortunate to have been able to actually make like a reasonably comfortable living doing this. The overall like health and happiness is head and shoulders above what it could be. I'm very fortunate in that regard.
Yeah. Was so on your profile, I have to ask, Time Magazine Person of the Year. What is the story? I mean, it seems such like a intense title. I mean, like, what's the story behind that?
Did you Google it?
And I didn't. I was just like, you know what? It's gonna be a good question just to throw out there and to see what happens.
The Time Magazine Person of the Year for oh gosh, what is that? 2004, I think. 2006.
2006 is
yeah, 2006. Yeah, the Person of the Year is everybody on planet Earth. So congratulations, you are also 2006.
God. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. I learned something new on the podcast.
Congratulations to you too. It's basically just a prank because I'm kind of a goofball. But it's funny how often it comes up when I'm like having a discussion with a client about getting hired, and they're like, "Wow, it's cool you're on the Sony team and Time Magazine." I'm like, "Oh,
yeah,
yeah."
Well, I noticed this that trait in one of the photos, the one that was photoshopped, and you posted it recently. And you it was a repost, right? It was like a post of like an older post, and people were I think there was like a couple people that didn't read the caption and they still got upset.
Yep.
And yeah, it's pretty it's pretty funny because social media can be so serious at times. So
I know
it's nice when you break
I feel like
it up.
you should never take yourself too seriously. I mean, you gotta have fun with life, even if you're doing things that aren't fun. And I don't know. I mean, I'm always a goofball, probably more than I should be. If you ask my girlfriend, I can't take anything seriously. But I figure, especially on social media, it's fun to keep it lighthearted.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's a great place to at least, it's a good outlet for that. For for all your travels, do you have kind of like a struggle or like a scary, because it's since you deal with animals and like outdoors, there's like obviously there's like risks and stuff. Is there something that stands out that you could share?
Yeah. So, I mean, like any outdoorsman, we always take as many precautions as we possibly can to avoid putting ourselves in a scenario that's like unrecoverably dangerous. But of
Yeah.
course, like you said, if you're outside enough, it's going to happen. You are going to get into some hairy situations. And, like this summer was backpacking in Alaska, and we had a mom grizzly with her cub just wander into our campsite while we're eating breakfast. And, it's like, those always get your heart pumping a little bit, but the main thing is like be prepared, know what you do in advance.
Yeah.
So that when it happens, you aren't like racking your brain. You have to know what to do. So it's like second nature, and we did, everything was good. Like I guess you said also polar bears. I just got back like 2 weeks ago from photographing polar bears, and that one's always interesting because they're one of the only animals on Earth that's actually known to actively hunt humans.
Oh, wow,
and it's not because we're like it's not really like because we're a delicacy. It's just that they live in such a flat, frozen world that they don't see other life forms. And so when they do, it's food. That's it. Like you're either a polar bear or you're food. But it's, same thing. It's like, it could be, if I was out there alone, for sure, that would be terrifying. But, you go with guides that know what they're doing. And you have to understand like the behavioral mechanisms that polar bears interact with. And it ends up not actually being that scary. It gets your adrenaline pumping, and it's like one of the most exciting experiences when you're, 40 feet away from the largest predator on planet Earth, or the largest land-based predator, I should say. They're not as big as like a great white shark, but same thing. It's there's like certain ways to behave where you minimize that risk and move can still do your job. And a huge part of that is like going with people who know what they're doing, making sure that you're not just glued to your viewfinder, because then you lose your periphery around you. But yeah, so there's always like exciting things. That's part of what keeps it going. It was like at my last job, the dangers were like, oh, I hope the forklift doesn't back over me. Which is like, that's the stupidest way to die. Nobody wants that on their tombstone, but at least this way I'm like living an exciting life.
Yeah, no, totally. And I guess if you do die, you do something that you love to do. So
totally. It sounds a little bit contrived to say like, he died doing what he loved, but there is some truth to it. Yeah. I unfortunately lost a roommate. He got blown off a cliff climbing a mountain, and it was like a very tragic situation for everyone involved, especially, his family and his roommates and everything. But it was one of those moments where it was like him and I had literally had that discussion while climbing mountains about like the inherent risks. And he had mentioned, like, hey man, I just hope if I die, I'm dying doing something cool, like climbing a mountain. And so it was like brings some peace to it.
Yeah.
And you're totally right. It's like, I don't want to get eaten by a polar bear, but there's a lot of stupider ways to die, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good story to tell, but yeah, I think, if you're going to die young, might as well do it something, that you enjoyed doing.
Yeah, for sure.
Just some like car crash or, unfortunate, tragedy. But yeah. And on to a positive note, what would you say, like, maybe it's like the hardest thing that you've like kind of overcame with with your work and like, trying to be successful and like full time and, pay bills and, that whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. The hardest thing I think for me, and I definitely know I'm not alone in this. This is like pretty common, I think, for freelance photographers, is just the proper valuation of your own time and effort and work. And when I was first getting started out, it's like I was so excited to earn a penny with it that I was just accepting pennies. And so people would, ask me to do stuff that would take like 4 or 5 days, and they'd pay $500. And it was like, it was fine. I was earning extra spending cash on the weekends, so it didn't bother me.
Yeah.
but it's tough. There's a lot of companies that will ask you to work in exchange for like a free hat
Yeah.
or a backpack. And that for me still to this day is like the biggest hurdle is how many companies have come to expect with this Instagram culture that they can just give you a t-shirt and expect you to do your job. And so I find myself constantly reiterating, like, I'm not just like posting on Instagram for fun. This is how I pay my bills. And, you want professional results, you have to hire a professional.
Yeah, totally.
And it's tough because there's no open source platform for people to discuss about this. There's no, like, you can't just go to like the what does a photograph cost table on Google and look up what you should charge. And so everyone's kind of just like feeling around in the dark, trying to like figure out what their appropriate market valuation is, et cetera. And it makes it tough. And that's actually one of the things we talk about in my workshops too, is like how to appropriately value yourself and then negotiate with these clients to find a middle ground you're both happy with. And it's tough. There's no great answer. Like I said, I still,
Yeah.
I don't want to say struggle with it, but it's definitely a thing I deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's like, so what's your budget? It's always that question. It's like it's really hard to read a company that can be like worth, millions and they just want to pay you $400. And it's like, that doesn't really like add up, So
Totally.
yeah, that's like part of the reason why. Well, the main reason I found you is through the Facebook group that me and Charlotte started. So it's now hidden and private. we closed it off, but that was the main reason. Is like talk about like, whatever kind of questions or like legal questions or just like questions that you're afraid to ask other photographers, but in this group you're able to know that everyone's there for the same reason, so it's not as scary to ask, or at least I hope it's not as scary.
That group has been a huge asset, and I definitely understand the reason for keeping that one a little bit locked off. I wish there was like not really a public forum, but it'd be cool if there was just like a easy way for newcoming freelancers to get those answers. Just because getting started is the toughest part. And I find that a lot of people who like have only been doing it for 6 months are the ones who accept these really low paying jobs because they're struggling to make ends meet. And then that unfortunately devalues the work for the established photographers. And I can't fault them for that because I did the same thing when I was there. And man, it was only like a year or two ago. I was dirt poor. I was just taking, any paying gig that existed. And so I can't fault them for it. A lot of people get mad, but it's tough when you're getting started to understand, your goal is to get as much money for as little work, and the company's goal is to get as much work for as little money.
Yeah. You're working against each other.
Totally. And then, I'm not going to blame the company either. It's like if they have $10,000 to spend and you come at them and say, hey, this will cost $1,000, they're not going to just give you $9,000 out of the goodness of their heart. Why would they do that?
Yeah.
So
of course
it's tough trying to get everyone on the same page for how much they should charge accordingly.
Yeah. There's no gold standard for photography. And that's like, kind of think that's one of the problems is like, obviously a beginner photographer charges a lot differently than a experienced or professional photographer, and I think that's part of the reason why people don't talk about it is it's almost like a gatekeeper. It's like you have to get through that struggle part to be able to get to the point where it's a little bit more open with other photographers. Like I definitely don't share how much I make with most people. It's just kind of like one of those odd questions that's like, I guess is taboo in some way, or at least it's been like taught to me like that's just not something to talk about, I guess. I don't know.
It's kind of an uncomfortable question in American society for some reason.
But like, it's I'm not gonna. There's no way I can tell a young photographer or a beginner that of how much they should charge. I have it's not an easy answer. But I definitely am all for at least charging like $100 instead of getting free close or whatever. Like at least they can get you in the door and get you paid a little bit. You got to start somewhere. But yeah, I think that barrier, instead of it being public, it's more of like that gatekeeper of um, putting you into that professional seat versus beginner or amateur.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it is nice to have somewhere to talk about things. I mean, I think a lot of the questions on that group are legal questions, and that's like a huge, huge part where a lot of photographers, because like a lot of photographers are creatives, they're not business people. So it's like, where do you get that information other than going to business school or having a lawyer or however many ways of finding out the information. So I think
Oh man,
it's
yeah,
nice.
it's tough too for sure because it's like you said, you're a creative and you take a photo you're proud of, and somebody says, "Hey, can I use that?" And like the answer is just yes, give me some money. But then you get this like 30-page contract, and you have to read it. And
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't go to law school, so half of it doesn't even make sense. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's interesting.
You just gotta look out for that usage. That's all.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, I mean, that's the thing too, though. Like usage, it's like unlimited usage. No, it's like unless you're really paying. Like like where is it going? Like all those questions are a part of that conversation with brands or companies or whatever, and a lot of people don't know how to have that conversation, which is frustrating, especially when I was starting or whatever. Like barely, I didn't even graduate college, so barely got out of high school. So it's like, but eventually you learn trial and error. But yeah, I mean, we all have horror stories with brands, I guess, and you learn from those mistakes.
Yeah, definitely, and then move forward and I try to be open and share those little tidbits that I've learned when people send me Instagram DMs and stuff. I don't always have time to respond to them, and so if anyone's listening and I ignore their DM, I'm sorry, I'm bad at the internet, but try to respond to those and help out as much as I can, because the phrase "a rising tide lifts all ships," or floats all ships, or whatever. It's very true.
Yeah, totally. I think even just like simple answers or just whatever you can share is all useful. I mean, this is what this podcast started out to be, or really, I mean, it essentially is. It's like we're talking, and hopefully, someone takes that information and uses it, and they're stoked on that, using that for their next phase of their business or whatever it may be, because a lot of this stuff is applicable in many different like occupations. So
Definitely. Yeah. This kind of stuff applies across all creative aspects, whether you're a painter or a sculptor or what have you. If you're freelancing, it's kind of the same battle, unfortunately.
yeah, totally. And I my fiance is a graphic designer, so and she is much busier than I am, but her like it because it seems to be that everyone needs graphic designers, but the it's the same process, and it's also like the same struggles, like the pricing thing, like her pricing is different than mine, because I don't know, I work on a day rate or like retainer or whatever, but hers is sometimes hourly, and then sometimes just flat rates, or it's like it ranges so much. And then trying to it's one of those things like, is there a way we can universally like just set a price, and like this is just like packages, and work from those packages versus them coming to you and having to like have a custom quote kind of thing. So she's been working on that.
Yeah, it's a good call. I used to do package kind of things, but I always found it's tough to get a one size fits all, because I'd have like 5 photos for $5,000. That's just like nice round numbers.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like I could bang out those 5 photos in a single day, and then one more day of editing, and it's like, heck yeah, I just made amazing money. And then sometimes like something goes wrong, and all of a sudden you're 3 days in, and then you spend 2 days editing, and then the client doesn't like something, and then 2 weeks later you're like, oh man, suddenly I made really bad money on this gig. Like this was not profitable at all. So man, it's tough because the packages are cool, but sometimes
Yeah, something
it's not always a one
ass.
size
Yeah.
fits all. Yeah.
Well, I think for her work, it would benefit her more, just because it's much more rigid and like with branding and stuff. It's like obviously we're shooting for a certain thing, and but like yeah, I mean it's different for everyone, and that's the struggle. You gotta find what works for you. So with you're outdoors, you're shooting photos, you're sponsored. So you're on the Alpha team, Sony Alpha team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you like working like with brands like that? Because it seems like Sony, and you helped a lot on my switch to Sony because of the lens options. There's so many, but it looks like GM was the best way to go, and so I did that. But
Yeah.
but it seems like Sony has such a great community. Like, do you go on like those Cando trips and like do all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's actually like the coolest part, man. So I was a Sony shooter before they added me to the team. So it wasn't like they reached out to me and told me to switch over, which I think is an important distinction. But
I think that's what they do with everyone. They have to be a Sony user for some time, and they take
which I think is a really important distinction. So you know that everyone who's endorsing it genuinely endorses it, like actually enjoys the products and made the personal decision to spend the money on it rather than I don't know, I probably contractually am not allowed to like throw a different camera company under the bus, but there's one right now that's like, it's paying people to switch to their system and endorse it. And it's like, you can't really trust those endorsements because like, if somebody's going to give me $20,000, I'll probably say that I like a Ferrari, even though I've never driven one in my life, So
you'll like a Ferrari. They're fun.
I guess that's a bad example. I'll definitely like a Ferrari. Let's say like a rusty bicycle.
Or Prius or something.
Yeah, that's a more apt description. It's kind of like the Prius of cameras where it's like, it's good, but it's not like, you're not going to be stoked on it. But Sony's got this really cool thing going. They have this awesome community, and that's been like the biggest benefit for me. It's really nice, like pitching projects, to be able to say I'm an ambassador for the largest electronics company in the world. It's like a huge endorsement for me personally that I am honored to be able to say. But man, the biggest benefit's just in the community, like meeting up with these ridiculously talented and successful creatives. Honestly, I feel like I'm not even like close to the same league as half the people I hang out with, but we get to do all these cool get-togethers, and you just like share ideas, and you always come away from them feeling just better about yourself and your art and your skills. And I'm just very impressed by the community they've built around that.
Yeah, I think I'll be completely honest, that's a huge part of why I switched. The main reason was to have like the photo and video setup with the same family of lenses. That's like the main reason. But the Sony community part or aspect of it seems so awesome. Like that's what photography should be, and how I would like to interact with photographers or just with like photography in general. I love community based things, and so it was a really big selling point. Because I've been a Nikon shooter since day one. I've used Sony system before, but like Nikon like all day, every day since I was 17, 18. So it's like,
that's all right, man. We all make mistakes. Don't beat yourself up over
it. I mean, I loved my camera, but it was time for a change, But I mean, I think that community is awesome, and it's a great example of how it should be. Like, it's like, it's just really cool to bring people together versus like friggin' battling it out against everyone.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's and it's cool because they have all these local meetups in every single city too. So it's like if you can't set the time aside to fly to wherever the Cando trip is, they do these Be Alpha meetups. There's one in like New York and Chicago. There was one here in Seattle. Every California city it feels like, and those are really fun too. If there's one, whoever's listening to this, if there's one in your like nearby city, they're really worth checking out. There's cool sets, free camera rentals, food and drink, and the social aspect for sure. Yeah, it's a great networking opportunity.
Yeah, it's a great way to. I mean, the lens rentals and like the try shit out. that's a pretty big part because it's like a lot of people. I mean, the lenses are so expensive, and it might it might sway you to buy that GM, if you're able to use it for a little bit because it's totally worth it.
Totally. That actually happened on one of my workshops. A girl came to photograph the aurora, and she had like an old camera, and it was fine. It functioned for her. And then I had an extra A7R3 with me, and I let her borrow it. And after a single night of using it, she got on Amazon and bought one. She was just like, "Wow, I didn't realize what I was missing out on."
Yeah.
So it's a smart move, letting people just try the gear out. It's crazy how much just hands-on experience will help.
Yeah, totally. I mean, a lot of people, yeah, like I said, it's like not able to get your hands on this $3,000, $4,000 cameras. It's like, I mean, it's a big jump to go from whatever other system like that could easily cost you $1,000, but it is nice. There, I mean, besides the menu system, the camera is amazing. The menu system is driving me nuts, but
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, it's just a learning curve. So
for sure.
so I have to talk about it because obviously a big part of my work is like overland style driving and or travel with the truck and stuff. And you just bought a van.
I
Is it a
did.
van or is it like a? I don't know. It's quite large. It looks like one of those like Arctic excursion vans.
Yeah, well, oof, that's the dream, right? But it's
Yeah.
so it is, I guess, a van. It's like an E350, the Ford Econoline E350,
Okay.
as its like base, but then it has this like big old shell on it. So it was a shuttle bus for like a ski area for a while. So it's been doing like
Okay.
little 2 to 3 mile trips for the last couple of years, just back and forth from like a hotel to the lift.
Yeah. Okay. That totally makes sense. It looks just like one of those shuttle buses.
Yeah, totally, totally. So I guess it's a van, but I'm
Yeah.
going to call it a van. I think that's easier than trying to distinguish what exactly it is.
Yeah, no, totally. Is it so you're gonna do a build out inside, like a living kind of build out, or just like kind of simple and
Yeah, no, totally. I'm going to try and make it like a home/office on wheels. I'm going to keep my apartment because I love being able to come home from a long trip and just like sit on a couch comfortably. I don't know if
yeah,
I want to live in a van full time yet, but
yeah, that's a
um,
big step.
for sure. But I find myself going on all these projects, and I'm fortunate. My girlfriend's a photographer too, and so we get all these projects where it'll be like 3 weeks on the road, and the client will like cover a rental car and hotels, so it's not like an additional cost necessarily, but
Yeah,
loading all of our camera gear into like a Ford Focus. And then every night you load it into a hotel room. And then in the morning you load it all back into your car. Then you drive 2 hours and you put it in a new hotel room.
yeah,
It got really old. And I was like, man, it'd be so nice to just have a home base. And just like all my stuff's there. I can do my photography, but then everything's the way I need it. And so
yeah,
this is a step in that direction. I'm really looking forward to it.
yeah. I mean, my truck's not as like it's not like inclusive. Like you can't like be in it all the time for work and stuff, but the same aspect of like I have everything there and everything to live and whatever for X amount of days, like off grid, is there. So, um, it's just you don't have to worry about going to town to get food or whatever. You can, you have a fridge or all your cooking stuff and blah blah blah. But it's definitely a luxury, like to have that with you at all times, and it definitely makes travel, or at least like long term travel, really really nice.
Totally. Yeah. And then another thing for it is like, even with the hotel room, sometimes the hotel isn't that close to where you want to shoot. So I'm
Yeah,
really looking forward to being able to like pull up, to the trailhead if it's allowed, and just spend the night there. It'll save me, an hour and a half of driving in the morning before sunrise, especially in the summer. Sunrises at 5 a.m. and I
yeah.
find myself waking up at 3 in the morning to go drive and get myself in position. So I'm really looking forward to spending more time on location and less time in transit.
Yeah, totally. I mean, most I mean, national parks obviously have campgrounds or ones that are right outside of it. And there's a is the truck 4x4 or is it just
Yeah,
yeah, it is. Okay, so I mean, like you're able to do, public land camping or whatever trails that allow it. With
Totally.
the size and stuff. But you can, yeah, I mean, there's tons of places to camp for free, and that are significantly closer than a hotel. Especially like, for example, a good example of that is Yosemite. Yosemite is it's like an hour away from any hotel. So
Yeah.
driving in, it's like such a pain, and um, it's windy and annoying to drive in the first place, especially in a big truck. And it's nice to just be, well, I mean, you could stay in the hotel in the park, but it's pretty expensive. But
Yeah, it is.
like like you could stay at one of the cabin or the tent thingies, the canvas ones, or the they have I think one of the campground. I think Camp Four and one of the other campgrounds is all year round. So you know it's pretty easy to get a site at those at that campground during the winter, because many people go to Yosemite during the winter. But yeah, I mean,
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah, live that Alex Honnold life, you know?
yeah, exactly. I mean, probably I think he's in a van too, but
Yeah,
um, yeah, I mean, it makes things so much nicer, and just having like all your gear in one place and safe too, which is nice.
yeah, yeah. I know he totally lives in a van. It was actually like that was one of the first times I remember seeing somebody do that. I was like watching a documentary about him, and it was like he's in his van all the time, and I was like, man, that's such a smart idea.
Yeah. Well, I think in a recent YouTube video that I watched of him, he made the same exact point. It's just like, I think it was like he was answering questions from Twitter or something, but he mentioned that it's just for a climber to be able to wake up and go climb. It's just so much uh more. It's just easier and convenient versus like traveling every day to the park, especially in Yosemite, because it's like I said, it's
Far.
far. And if you live in like San Francisco or Sacramento or whatever, it's still far, even though it's like maybe a couple hours or something. Um but yeah, it makes things pretty nice.
Totally. I mean, I think that's a battle that everybody kind of puts up with in their daily life, anyways. You know, even like just
Yeah,
going to the gym. Like if your gym is 5 minutes away, you'll
yeah,
make time for it. It's not so hard. But if you live half an hour away, I've definitely like fallen off the exercise train when it's a half an hour drive to go to the gym, because then your 1 hour workout takes 2 hours out of your day. And so
yeah,
yeah, the van life is kind of cool. I'm looking forward to it. I've been sleeping in a 2010 Forester, and I can only handle about 2 nights of that before I'm
yeah.
ready to be back in a bed.
It's like gonna be like a castle for you, this new one.
Dude, yeah, I can't wait. It's super weird talking to people about the build outside. You know, I live in a tiny apartment. I unfortunately can't do the construction myself,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah,
funny talking to the people, because they're like, yeah, we can put in a kitchen
yeah,
and a little studio area for you to work. And do you want a shower? And I'm like, wait, this is a car?
yeah. A fridge, like having not ice in your fucking ice chest. It's like
Yeah,
having
it's
that.
crazy.
That's when I got a fridge. It was like game changer for me. That was simply the best, one of the best things about my truck.
That's actually another good point, though, because you know, like right now, you do a remote project in like Wyoming, you know, anywhere other than the Tetons, because Jackson's right there. But like, say you're near the Wind Rivers,
Yeah,
it's like, man, you go to this like convenience store and you get a kind of a gross old sandwich, and that's like your dinner, and you might get a granola bar for breakfast,
yeah,
and then the next day you have to restock. So it'll be so nice to have a fridge and actually be able to like go for 3 or 4 days and have good fresh food.
yeah. Like, yeah, cook it up, and or even easy stuff. It's just like, and readily available versus like taking the time to travel to that convenience store, and then coming back to where you just want to stay anyways. It makes things a lot easier. I think that's why it's such like a popular thing right now. It's like the convenience of it, and people live in like full time in vans, which is like interesting. Like I could do it, like, but for not a very long period of time, like maybe 6 months to a year. But because that's just not me. But maybe when I was like
Yeah,
20, I could have done that. But you know what I mean? It's like it's really, it's such a popular thing, and for good reason.
I think I could live full time in my van if I was making enough passive income, you know, like just selling enough prints
Yeah.
or like just existing royalty fees to like pay the bills comfortably and, you know, like continue to save a little bit for retirement, I could totally do that. But with the current place my career is at, I need internet. I need it too much.
Yeah. That's a big one.
It's too important.
Yeah, the fiance can't really travel with me as much because of that reasoning, because she needs the internet like pretty consistently. So unfortunately, we haven't figured out that aspect of her work, but I think we're working on it, trying to get her more passive income.
Yeah.
But yeah, so where's your next trip?
You know, so I basically wasn't home from like April through October, November-ish. So I'm kind of open right now, which is awesome. I don't have really anything lined up for the end of the year, which is a little bit frightening because that also means no revenue being generated. But I'm going to catch up on some personal projects and you know, write some blogs, get the website looking good heading into 2020. And then the next thing on my schedule is Sun Valley, Idaho, going out to do some ski photography.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Idaho's awesome. I used to live in Boise for a couple of years.
But. Oh, nice. Yeah, I love Idaho. It's a really, it's an underrepresented state. Maybe the people who live there don't want me talking about it like this because they want to keep it a hidden secret, but it's so cool.
A little isolated, but does have its like charm, and definitely has some amazing, especially on the east side, some amazing landscapes and some hidden stuff that I won't mention, but but that, I mean, Idaho's Sun Valley's rad. And then so that's pretty much that was my last question. So we already been going for like 50 minutes, so usually they're about an hour. And any last words that you want to like say or tell people where they can find your stuff and, you know, that whole thing?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, finding my stuff, I'm just Nate in the Wild on the internet. If you just type that into almost any search bar, you'll find me through that. Please don't send me a friend request on my personal Facebook.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. It doesn't happen that often. Yeah. No, I'm still one of those people who has my real name on my Facebook. I've seen a lot of people change their names because it gets weird, but I'm just Nate in the Wild around the internet. And, I guess the last thing I want to say, I just want to maybe take this opportunity on the platform, encourage everybody to travel responsibly and sustainably, you know, leave no trace while you're out in the backcountry, and
love it.
You know, be smart about your carbon footprint in your everyday choices. Yeah,
totally. That's gotta do that every day. Cause we just did a big ass cleanup and we did 30,000 pounds or something of trash in public land. And it was like,
oh man,
it was so wild. It's pretty mind blowing stuff, but
it breaks my heart.
Yeah. I think that's like the easiest thing for people easiest note to give everyone. It's like, all you got to do is pick up some trash. Or at least take your trash.
Pack it in, pack it out.
Take your trash out. Yeah.
Exactly. Totally. And then, you know, if you feel like being extra good, pack out a little bit more than you brought in. It won't be very hard to find trash and leave it a little better than you found it. And if everybody does that, we're going to be able to continue using these beautiful natural places for years. Yeah,
100%. Cool. Well, thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. This was good.
All right. We'll talk soon.
All right. Cheers. Have a good day.
See ya. All right, guys. Thanks again for listening to another episode of the podcast. You can check us out on roaminglost.co. That's where the blog will be updated as much as I possibly can. You can also search Roaming Lost on any of the other platforms: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Highly recommend checking those out. Especially YouTube. We'll be posting the podcast up with a video, so if you listen to podcasts in that way, then check that out. And we'll see you at the next one. All right, guys. Thanks again. Adios.